Hi, this is Phyllis. I just want to tell you a little bit about my nonprofit Second Wind and the kinds of things that we do. So I want to go through this and give you a good overview so you'll know what to expect when you visit Second Wind. Again, I have a business advisory professional services firm and a nonprofit that's devoted to education and community. So I'm able to combine my passions for learning as well as sharing information that I've gathered, as well as helping the community, especially during COVID times. I want to remind everyone that we're still in the pandemic. The vaccines are going well. We have a population of 300 million, so we still have several hundred million to go, but we just want to keep up the pace and just make sure that everyone stays healthy in this process. So that's why I have the masks and a reminder that we really had a reality check with COVID-19, and that's still going on now. I've written and published over 80 books based on in-depth research, my lived experience, and I just put one of these on the screen, which is titled Second Wind. It's one of the books required to complete my program, and it entails an overview of several issues, principles of organizations, and systems. I did actually take a look at legal systems, healthcare systems, as well as other systems such as transportation. And it gives you an overview of the theories as well as the practical issues and applications, which is very relevant. I did include a traffic circle as well as transportation systems. So as we go through with these new programs for infrastructure and funding, it's a good reminder that there's quite a few resources and very important information to consider. So I brought up my Circle Games book just as a reminder that you've got to hit your shot. And I use an example of the basketball players, pro as well as college, that I followed when I was in college. But I thought this would be a good overview just to remind us that we have to make that shot, do our best, and sometimes it takes several efforts, but we will get there eventually. So I put that in. But I'm also talking about the changes, conflict management, communication, and the changes that one makes in terms of internal as well as external. And I'm using one example. I was reminded that I was doing research at UCLA, and I attended a presentation by a gentleman by the name of Meta World Peace that I'd never heard of. I know several people know of this gentleman, but I've learned he has quite a name attached. So this was one of the incidents that helped earn his reputation in terms of reactions, conflict resolutions, and the challenges. The title of this one is Ron Artest and Ben Wallace at the NBA Pacers game. Now, Meta World Peace has made a transformation, and the presentation that he made at UCLA was a good indicator of what one goes through once one is willing to own up and make a decision to make some changes. Often it can be a very difficult or series of very challenging situations. That's why I want to share this as a reminder that it often has to do with a personal choice as well as others involved. Now, I'll show this briefly just to show you this was Ron Artest and Ben Wallace at the NBA Pacers. And the whole point is I do my research. I talk to the experts. I look at what's going on in life and I see how others deal with these situations. And I think COVID has erupted or caused quite a few very strong emotions, which we see here. The managers, the coaches, everyone's trying to jump in and try to resolve this. There goes a shoe. and we see a reaction. And sometimes I recall in the past year, there have been some very strong emotional reactions, but we do our best. It erupted into a major incident, and everyone tried to jump in. And when I see this, I'm reminded of several things, including my 7 uncles. Now, whenever I saw them, there was peace and quiet, but I know it took a lot to get them to that point. So it's a whole crowd, can't do too much, but you make it through. Okay, so this is the before scene, and now we'll switch on back to the after that I happened to attend. And I'm very thankful that I did because it showed me how you can happen very coincidentally on very relevant personal stories that help move you along. So this was an interview between Danny Green, Meta World Peace. He's changed his name from Ron Artest to Meta World Peace, and Harrison Sanford. So I did a little further search and discovered that he's changed his name again to include his wife's name, which is a beautiful tribute to the unity and communication that it takes to stay in those engagements. But I'm very happy to learn that the former Laker, who won a 2010 title, as well as others, including myself, are willing to consider different ways to resolve conflicts rather than these reactions. And I was very thankful for that UCLA presentation. He even thanked the experts, medical and health experts, help him move forward in his life. And again, I'm very thankful for just learning more about this gentleman because, as I mentioned in another slide, I had an aunt, my father's sister, who served in World War II, I believe the Mail Corps in Europe. And when she returned, she went to San Francisco and she engaged in tracing the family tree. And she was called all what kind of names you can imagine. At that time, it was before Alex Haley endeavored to even pursue the same work. Now it's common, but back then it was, well, way out there. I'll leave it at that. But I'm honoring people that are willing to go further, get information. She even tried to change her name. That's what I heard. You know how family stories go. I heard she tried to change her name. So when I hear about these people changing their names, that hits a chord with me too. So let me move forward again. My study and my work deals with essential workers because I've been in those jobs that pay very low, but you have to show up to work. Otherwise, many cases, you don't eat. So that's why I included this gentleman here. I did the research on Sheba ghost ship and the guano, as well as egg sucking dog, just to honor those people in the back, in the warehouse, the loading dock that are in there every day, whether they like it or not, but it's a matter of survival. Now, it appears this picture was taken before COVID, but in many cases, I understand many of these working sites had very little PPE. So again, I want to tribute and thank these essential workers that we often take for granted. So again, I want to keep moving forward. I love these graphics. And as you look at this, just think of what images this invokes in terms of movement, in terms of color, and the overflowing currents of what's helping the world move forward as we make it through this pandemic. Again, I did the Sheba Ghost Ship summary, the interview with Captain Lowe. There were several other captains and people involved in the trade, and I did research, but I wanted to end it at that point. There's some interesting names that I discovered. I found that last name Lowe in some slave captain records for the century prior, the 1700s and the 1600s. I'm not sure if there's any connection, but I guess Henry Louis Gates can be the one to pursue that if he's interested. I want to show that I do have scholarly references. I'm not just pulling this out of the air. And I want to go through this just in terms of supporting the video that I prepared. References, the first one, Barakal, titled Essential Labor, Marginalized People in the American Whaling Industry, southeastern Massachusetts. Now, there was a great presentation by a gentleman at the Woods Hole Institute, which is near Martha's Vineyard. And he mentioned that about a third or more of the individuals in the whaling industry were African American, Black, or Negro, whatever the term was used. And there were others that often were not shown in film. So I want to show and cite these references to show that it takes a lot, not just coming up with the right words, but coming up with the backup, the evidence to support these statements. The second one, BHAT, I cited in another report titled Maritime Links, Imperialism, Diaspora, and the Ibis Trilogy in Eastern and Western Synergies. The third citation, peer-reviewed scholarly references, Driscoll, titled Jihad Against Gorgeous White Men in the Whites Are Enemies of Heaven, Duke University Press. I won't take that any further. The next one, Fan, The Knight Brothers in Nuis Huang, U.S. Merchants and Foreign Life in a Small Chinese Treaty Port, the Chinese Historical Review. So what I've learned in doing this research and writing, and that's another reason why I showed Ron Artest as well as his transformation. One can hit quite a few emotional currents as you go through, and I've mentioned it in a few podcasts that it was time to put a subject down or put it aside for the moment, and I found that happening as I pursued this. Another reference is by Hill, titled Clipper Ships, The Appeal of Sail. The fourth is Hulm, Hume, The Story of Ships in a Bottle, Political Sociologies of the Cultural Encounter, and the fourth, O'Farrell, Autobiography of W.G. Hammack. So I'm citing this just to show, again, it's connected to the work I did to pursue my PhD. So COVID has given us teleworking, giving food, helping at the food bank, connecting with the UCLA School of Public Health through conferences, and again, staying hydrated. So that's why I'm taking a pause to get my necessary water. UCLA School of Public Health, attending virtual conferences. We have Dr. Sandra Hernandez, Dr. Michael Rodriguez, Dr. Sandro Galea, and Dr. Nadine Garcia, who've kept me informed, as well as others, as we make it through the COVID pandemic with over 560,000 deaths. But most of this work, again, has been virtual, and I'm very thankful for the technology that has allowed me to stay connected and move forward in my work, helping community and sharing information and education. I've continued to publish. On the left, I've shown the cover sheet from one of my other books, which is titled Gumbo, Principles of Human Development, which has severely been impacted by COVID-19, as well as one of the podcasts that has to do with the holidays, Christmas celebrations, and again, conflicts and how that's resolved with so many last minute changes. So again, I want to move forward on this. The City of Hope has been another resource. They're closed currently due to the COVID pandemic, but I've been in touch. Their labs are still open, so that's encouraging because I'm a strong advocate of research, and in particular, cancer research. So God bless City of Hope and keep up the great work that you're doing. Now, I want to move this forward. There have been conferences again. The Southern California Women's Health Conference, I've supported, it seems like at least 10, possibly 15 years. This year, it was virtual, and they had a beautiful luncheon prepared by nutritionists that was delivered right to my doorstep. And I sat there with the bag, and it was just amazing. But the lunch was delicious, and as we might say, they really put their foot in it. So here's some background about the company. I graduated from UCLA, did my graduate work at George Washington University, worked on my PhD, and I'm also have audit experience as well as business advisory and financial advisory services, as well as law school. I've done law school research or law research um, for firms in various disciplines of the law, and I included that in my research. Here's a quick summary of some activities I've continued, including providing congressional comments, public comment to the LA County Board of Supervisors, as well as the city of Pasadena. So this is a summary. I want you to understand it takes a lot of work as well as a lot of dedication, but it's very important to document things so that people will know, well, what did you do before, after, and during COVID? So we're moving forward. There's still a lot of uncertainty, but I'm here. That's the number one claim that I'm very happy to say. I've done analysis of educational foundations and worked as an instructor and faculty at various universities. Here's a sample of one of the congressional comments I submitted on the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on communities of color. In May, it was about 3 months, 3 months after the first COVID lockdown. And my suggestions were to adjust the funding priorities from the $650 billion defense budget. Suggests focusing on affordable and sustainable housing or rent vouchers to ease the burden that 90% of Americans are facing. Focus again on public safety, including Justice in Policing Act. So these are some of the comments that I provided, and I'm very thankful again, even though COVID has been a challenge, I've been able to stay connected and do my part as far as contributing towards moving forward. Uh, I've connected and supported the work of healthcare workers, including displayed here parents, families, children, as well as physicians. This is an image of the Association of Black Female Physicians, but the healthcare community have been on the front line, and I've done what I can to support their activities. So I wanted to include that, as well as focus on the number of children under 18 in the United States increased from 47 million in 1950 to 74 million in 2010. Now we're in 2020, the number was expected to increase even higher, 74 million by 2020. We're in 2021, so it will be interesting once the census data is gathered to see what the numbers are, but we have a significant proportion of the population affected. This is the cover shot of Gumbo, Principles of Human Development, and it's a study of various stages of human growth that we all deal with, starting from infancy, various stages of childhood, mid-age, mid-high school age, so-called adulthood, and then the aging segment of our population. It's quite a bit of interesting information. I thank the Annenberg Foundation to help. That helped me as far as gathering my data, as well as looking at my perspectives and experiences as a parent. So this Gumbo, Principles of Human Development book, it's on Amazon. It's about, as I said, comparing the ideas, the theories versus realities, and now pandemic realities. This is one segment, early adolescent, as I said, 13 through 15. They say this was prior to COVID. Thinking becomes more self-conscious, idealistic, critical. The ability to grasp irony and sarcasm develops. So there have been some incidents where you see people just don't get it. Well, sometimes people don't ever get it. But according to these specialists, they say at this stage, one does develop that ability. Again, I think I'll take a moment to hydrate. Bear with me with my water. So my ebooks cover education, and I'm working on, excuse me, putting them in libraries, podcasts, as well as making public appearances. These are covers. As I said, there's 80. So I just want to highlight a few more changes. This is on Amazon. This was the first. Steam, it's a short story trilogy, short, sweet, to the point fiction, where I changed genre from the scholarly writing and changes to short stories. And then this engineering management, globally distributed goods and services. So I'm attending now the LA Times, the Festival of Books, getting a lot of ideas. And it's great because it's virtual. I do the research. I'm still reaching out and connecting with the community and getting ideas. And this shows how you can get ideas that can move you ahead from reading and literacy and books. Again, this is a summary. If you've never attended, I would suggest that you check it out because they've had over 100,000 attendees when it was in person. It's the largest in-person literary event, which historically takes place in April and is continuing this year. It started April 17th and it will last for another week. So check it out. We had Barack Obama and Ava DuVernay have a chat yesterday. Prior to that, Walter Mosley was in person, and there was another very interesting presentation about the Sackler family. So I'm doing this to give you an overview of the kind of activities I'm involved in during COVID-19 to keep moving forward as far as my business, as well as community and educational engagement. In addition, there's a Patrick Radden Keefe presentation I mentioned titled author of The Empire of Pain. That was his conversation with Matt Hamilton discussing the Sackler family that has become somewhat um, in the news recently, connected with Valium and the Oxycontin scandal. So you may want to check that out. It's all these are pre-recorded. So this is an interesting conversation that for people that are interested in family history, politics, as well as the healthcare industry, titled Empires of Pain. Again, education matters. Education literacy does matter. I've had my books placed in public libraries and I want to continue. Some people may say, well, the libraries are closed. Not quite. They have drive up, drive through service. Some libraries also have mobile lending, which is another great resource, bit of knowledge that I've learned. And my book, Shorts Steam, is on the collection now of a library that has a 80 plus branches. So you can check that out, make arrangements to pick up the book, drive through, and also my books are ebooks. You can get them on Kindle as well as on your cell phone. So I focus on social impacts and encourage change in the world in this way. This is from Cal State Fullerton that had a stock market game with their students that I continue to support. We also had a recent economics update and presentation from the Federal Reserve. So I'm wanted to just give you an overview. I've been connected with the U.S. Advanced Manufacturing Coffee presentations and other trade presentations. This is coming up to talk about trade in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand, just to get a virtual coffee presentation and understand business opportunities locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally, exploring opportunities and get expanded outlook on opportunities even in COVID, or I should say, because of COVID in many cases. Um, I'm also involved in philanthropy, giving back, and also focusing again on my family roots. I found this great map and I wanted to share that in this presentation because my family's hometown is here to the right, lower right, Pascagoula, Mississippi. And oftentimes we would go into New Orleans and then take the Highway 10 across to get to Pascagoula, either the Greyhound bus or in many cases fly into New Orleans and then drive across. But the towns across on the Gulf Coast are towns my father and my Uncle Willie would often talk about when they were enjoying their each other's company. My grandmother was born in Gautier, Gautier. It's the Mississippi pronunciation of French, Gautier. My father and Uncle Willie would talk about going over to Ocean Springs, going to Biloxi, where my aunt lived. Here's Gulfport. I'm heading from Pascagoula, heading west along Highway 10. Long Beach is here, past Christian, Bay St. Louis, and Waveland and Diamond Head on the way heading west to New Orleans. And I think as young men, they used to go all along these places, but often the conversation would be cut short whenever I showed up in the room. The laughing would stop. So I knew it was grown up talk, and that was the end of that conversation. But again, this is the area that they grew up. And I think that's one reason why we're in California, because they're used to being around the water. They're used to being dock workers. And I recall seeing Cat Island, these other islands that are people are taking boats to visit, camp, and explore. Deep Island, and that's closest as I've ever been, but they're quite beautiful. That's another reason why I believe I love the beach here. I wanted to mention as a side note, Bruce's Beach was once owned by this family, which is shown in this slide. And recently, LA County Board of Supervisors voted to return this property, prime land in Manhattan Beach, back to Bruce's Beach. And I'm very glad to hear about that. Some people are managing to get some reparations for their losses, because my grandmother's property in Pascagoula was lost due to eminent domain. But one should never give up hope. That's something to remember. Bruce Beach, the vote here by LA County Board of Supervisors, it was a recommendation. And I want to thank Supervisor Hahn and Supervisor Holly Mitchell to direct the CEO to report back with the plan as a minimum to return the property. So I voted in favor of this, as well as provided other public comments, including the Temple City Library. There was a vote to add some incremental funding to help with the maintenance of Temple City Library. So these are some of the many things I'm able to do, luckily, virtually, safely at a distance. I mentioned my book is on the stacks now with major public library system. And I learned that they have computers and laptops available to rent. And I want to share that people who are not, who don't have access to a computer or want to supplement what they have, you can rent these. The library will lend you a laptop, you reserve it, then you can pick it up or have someone pick it up for you, which might solve a problem as far as not having access to a computer. And I've learned it's essential, because using a cell phone alone is not enough. Anyway, there's bookmobiles also with this library system. They're traveling around. We recently celebrated Native American Heritage Month, so I want to honor and celebrate the beautiful mix of cultures and people here that we're surrounded. And it's an asset, it's a true resource if we can manage to, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, resolve these differences, move ahead and eliminate the hate to improve our progress as we move through COVID-19. We had a women's history celebration, which I participated, but I wanted to make a note that Black women, African American women, had to wait 50 years, but that right to vote for Black women was achieved in the 1960s, and it's something very precious that we should hold on to and pay attention when there are allegations of retracting or diminishing our rights under the law. I'm including a picture of Shirley Chisholm here. For those of you that don't recognize her, you can see my cursor. I'm surrounding her in white with the Capitol behind her. We had a Her Story celebration with the city of Pasadena this week, and it was a highlight on the leadership that we have here to be thankful for. The city of Pasadena had former city council person, Mrs. Jackie Robinson Beasley, as well as the LA County Board of Supervisor representatives, Ms. Catherine Barker, as well as Congresswoman Chu. So it's very important to celebrate and honor the achievements of women in politics and leadership. And this was one political leader who really broke many of the barriers. You can see her finger pointed up just to remind people to pay attention, be aware. And one of the statements associated with her is Shirley Chisholm, unbought, unbossed. So I provide pro bono services. I volunteer. I make donations to other community service providers who've been around for years, and they're willingly accepting donations, support, as well as just endorsements, such as the Pasadena Senior Center, the National Lawyers Guild, that just sent me an email update regarding the recent legislation, including the International Court of Justice rulings. Tenant housing rights organizations in Pasadena, as well as nationally, eviction defense networks, as well as congressional committees, including those studying COVID impacts. We have partners that I support, including Charles Drew Medical University for their COVID testing. Again, I mentioned I support, make comments to city council meetings. I supported the Nurses United Medicare for All event and activity at Caltech, as well as the Commission on the Status of Women. That's who sponsored the Her Story event. Now, the library system that I mentioned accepted my book has a $200 million budget. And I'm very strongly committed to making sure that our tax dollars, my tax dollars, are spent wisely and in consistent alignment with my beliefs, goals, and the beliefs of my partners and my organization. So I work with sponsors, including partners such as the National Geographic. I work with the writers on tour, including the event that's happening today, the UCLA and USC Festival of Book that's going on, as well as local events. Here's one exhibit that National Geographic has proposed, a traveling exhibit that salutes women as one of the key components of society. Over 52% of the population, it helps if you boost a woman, you actually boost society. There are women whose efforts, past and present, reshape leadership and define what it takes to be women. We show these hardworking women laboring for hours, picking the products. I believe these are tea leaves that eventually will end up in on our tables, kitchen tables, and in our cups. We have other women who are celebrating a religious ceremony. The spiritual aspect cannot be overlooked, as well as education. We see these women in the classroom, in the educational setting, to inspire the next generation. And this is going on all over the world. So often we women are teaching in the classroom, then we have our own families to help. I also work and support art. This was an exhibit, a contest, I believe, by Getty Museum that was asking volunteers to show their best recreation of famous art. So we see on the left Van Gogh, and on the right somebody's dog in a wool cap with the same jacket. And I'll leave it at that. I do have an overview of some of the things I've focused on, including management practices, investment, risk assessment. I've worked in healthcare, aerospace, high tech, and I'm going through this overview in case you have questions. Someone asked me the other day, well, what do you do? Well, I'm giving you a brief overview of some of the things I do. I've worked with healthcare. I did a recent Medicare related audit. I worked in aerospace for years, two commercial international airlines. And I think that's the connection to my book, Shorts Steam, as well as telecommunications and utilities. Um, there's a film that's out, short film, that talks about women as scientists. And I've been involved with STEM, did laboratory and biotech work. And I want to highlight the work that can often be isolating, that can lead to breakthroughs. This is a PhD in chemistry that made this statement. She's part of the film. Basically, she said at her time, there were no Black women chemistry professors at the university level. And I agree, I don't recall seeing any, but I do recall my biology teacher was African American in high school. So there's representation, it's just very few and far beyond. And I want to encourage others to pursue, look at the science, look at technology and engineering. We need as many hands on deck as possible. Here's a good representation by Southern California Edison that I've worked with, partnered with to support brightening our communities. And they're hard at work doing some of the little things, paint job, as well as powering our systems. So again, thank you, Southern California Edison. I worked and supported the voting campaign, as well as another podcast that had to do with travel, transportation, titled Where Are You Heading? It's another scenario from creative writing, but it ends with an honor and salute to the Pullman porters. I did work with the City of Los Angeles Census 2020, and this is a excerpt from a letter of reference from the mayor's office for that work. And also, I was a visiting professor with the George Washington University. One of their textile presentations, there was a great discussion about sustainable fashions as in their efforts to clean up the industry. Patagonia and Prada were highlighted. There was another event, National Book Festival. And again, if this goes on a little bit longer, you can always pause, stop, move ahead, as well as just flip through. But at least this will help answer the question, what do I do? There was the National Book Festival, 20-year book festival that I attended, and it was fantastic. There was an honor to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This lady is the Librarian of Congress, which I was so excited to learn about because I did some of my research for my graduate school MBA program. Deep, deep in the stacks of Library of Congress, never saw a soul that looked like me. And now we have this lady who is the librarian in charge at the Library of Congress. That was a great event in September 2020. But again, I'm always learning things, and I discovered there is a section of papers that were discovered connected to Harriet Tubman, as well as Omar ibn Said, a runaway from U.S. enslavement who wrote in Arabic in a jail cell. So this helps to blow up, explode the myth that we did have literacy, we did have writing, and we had people that were brought here to work, but were trained and literate. So this is proof, evidence from one person who actually wrote in Arabic in the jail cell. And you can look here at the bottom. These are brief videos that you can actually search and listen to at the Library of Congress that honors the work, the actual writings of these individuals. So again, there's a lot of time during lockdown, and it's a great time to discover. The Public Trust is a film that was produced to demonstrate the fight, environmental fight to protect America's public lands. And that was something supported and advocated by Patagonia. Again, sustainability, environment, and green climate issues are a focus of what I'm involved in. And this is a good visual of their products. Two people in denim, two different looks, but denim done the right way. And I want to encourage and invite the listeners to help support and participate in Denim Day. That's coming up next week. I believe it's the 28th, and it's a international celebration where people are encouraged to wear denim as well as to advocate and help for protection and safety for victims of violence. This fashion show at the Textile Museum gives you another overview of the beautiful display of fabrics, this history, as well as the industry that is involved with these various displays. So again, I hope I've given you a little bit more to think about, helped answer the question, what do you do? If you have any more questions, you can always follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. You can send me an email. And again, thank you for listening. You have a great day and come visit Second Wind whenever you like. Thank you very much.